should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. Preferably in a residential area.
The following thoughts on Happy Hour do not represent Cox Media Group or its sponsoring. Anything you hear may and will be used against you. Thank you. Voted as best local podcast in Tampa Bay by the Creative Loafing. You're listening to Happy Hour. You're tuned in to Happy Hour, an hour where Happy rants about something. Sit back and listen in. Happy Hour is on now. Happy Hour is on now.
What up? This is Happy Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppy. And for the next hour, my goal in life is to change the way you think about things. For the next hour, I want my rants to be the thing that makes you change your opinion and then you think the way I do. But call the show. 856-49-HOPPY. That is 856-49-HOPPY. And you can download the app, Hoppy Radio, in the Google Play and iPhone shop and listen to all 130 interviews I've done, and you can chat me live. So check that out. And we have a very special guest on the phone line. I've known this dude for going on 4 years now. I used to do radio at WHCM 88.3 Harper College Radio in the major market of Palatine, Illinois. And for about 6 weeks, we did a show called Chi-Town and the Big Apple. On the phone line is one of the up-and-comers in the sports media business. Neil Dwyer is on the phone line. What's up?
This is taking way too long. Not only to intro me, but actually get me on your show.
No, what? No. Listen, yes. Neil, you should be happy you're on the show, man. I thought you would love that intro. I have to introduce the show to get people to call in. I have to introduce it so they'll chat us live, and then I get to you, man. You should be pumped up, dude.
I'm just watching Joe Girardi get thrown out of the Yankee game, so let's keep it going here.
Well, man, how did we first meet? Because what happened was, I believe you messaged me on my old fan page from my awful show, the Ryan Hoppy Show, and did you think I was bigger? How did it first come where you messaged me on that fan page? I'm trying to remember, because it was going on like August or July 2012.
Yes, of course. I found you on YouTube, and you were doing these sports rants on there. And I guess, yeah, I did. I definitely thought you were bigger than you were for sure. And you kind of messaged me because I was asking you how you get those YouTube videos out there and how you get big. And you were giving me all kinds of advice. And the fact that you actually gave me advice on something is not only kind of profound, but kind of dumb on my part. I don't know if you see it the same way.
Well, I don't know why you would think I was big anyway. I couldn't get a word out back then. I had a worse speech impediment. I don't know how you would think I was big by watching webcam videos of me in my room with my two cats. In what world were you like, wow, this Ryan Hoppy kid seems like the future of radio?
Well, I was really stupid back then. What do you want me to say?
Dude, you're supposed to have glowing confidence, man. You're supposed to be pumping me up. You're on my show. I'm just kidding. Dude, so then...
Well, listen, I love you. I'm happy to be on. I'm just... I get to razz you a little bit. That's just how we do it in radio.
So here's what happened then. I ended up doing a show at Harper College Radio, WHCM 88.3, and you were the sports analysis for me. You were the guy who broke down the NFL games. And basically what you would do is this. I'd be like, so who's winning? Panthers or Seahawks? And you'd be like, here's why the Seahawks are winning. All right, who's winning? Broncos or Lions? It was the most hackiest, boring radio. Do you remember that when I did the Hoppy and Sack show?
I just can't believe that there was a time when the Panthers were bad.
I know. It was weird to think about. That's when they had the guy from...
There was a time that you thought you were good at sports talk. That's the other
Yeah, I don't know why I would do sports talk radio. It was very odd. It was very confusing. Like, what did you think of that?
Well, listen, you brought your Chicago perspective. You were mad at, first Lovie Smith and Trestman. and everybody else with the Bears personnel. And then when you were on Sacramento, you were mad at the Maloofs for a while.
Well, that was very bizarre. I was a fan of the Don Geronimo show on in Sacramento, and he was like a shock jock who would bitch about the Maloofs. Well, back then it was the Maloofs, the way I would talk, and they were the owners of the Kings. And here I am, Neil, doing a show in Chicago, quote unquote, and then I'm bitching about the Maloofs in small town Sacramento. It was a very odd time for me. You know what I mean?
Oh, listen, you were trying to get on every freaking little market you could get your little hands on. But, hey, to each his own.
And then before we get into everything you've been up to, before we get into the mind of Neil Dwyer, how about you recount the day when we would do the show? Now, you were up in Miami, so you were down in Miami, rather. I was up in Chicago. And I would have you Skype into the show, and then I would just put the laptop next to the microphone, and it must have sounded awful to all four listeners we had in the Harper College parking lot. And there was a time when I was really big into the Opie and Anthony show, and I guess they got into some battle with Mary Ann from Brooklyn, the legendary person that calls in the Howard show. So what happened was this. I ended up saying that she was a bitch on air, and who walked in? Recount what happened.
Well, first of all, I was definitely more comfortable than you. I was sitting on my dorm room bed while I was doing a show. So they definitely provided for 2 hours of fun, and at least fun on my pillow, wink, wink. But all of a sudden, this guy comes in, this really fat guy, and he starts yelling at you, and I'm not sure what happened, but long story short, the guy that came in was the Harper College radio. I don't know if you want to call him a GM because you
program director of nothing.
The signal couldn't reach beyond the mailbox in the corner. So I don't know what you want to call him, a GM or whatever, but he started screaming at Ryan, saying that you can't talk about Howard Stern, and that if you do try to mention him, you have to call him a DJ, which actually Howard Stern would be insulted by if you called him a DJ from Sirius XM.
And then he said it was slander.
If you ever called Howard Stern a DJ, he would punch you in the face.
Yeah, I believe Howard hates radio DJs. I don't think he would want to be called one. It was very odd. And then I ended up like quitting 2 weeks later because he said I was going to be the program director at WHCM. But then that girl, Trixie, that did not like me, came back. Remember that?
There were a lot of interesting characters going through the Palatine streets, that's for sure.
So then after that, you lost your gig of 5 weeks of being the co-host of a very little listened to show in Palatine, Illinois. So what have you done, Neil Dwyer, the future of sports talk radio? What have you done since February 2012?
Well, first of all, I think the two biggest guests on your show were your friend George Pritchard Harris, the children's book author, and was twins with Zach. And then my buddy David, the filmmaker, who I brought on because Ryan here told me that the signal reaches Chicago. So I figured I'd get my friend on. He'll want to come on because you could be in a market, a big market. Turns out, again, the signal did not reach beyond.
Did you actually believe that it would reach Chicago?
I believed it because I was stupid. First of all, I had my blonde. I still have my blonde moments, but back then I especially had my blonde moments.
What did he ever say about our interview?
He loved it. David's a good guy. He'll do any interview. He's done stations. He did our show. He did a local show back here in New York on a school community station that I was working for at the time. He's done station down in West Palm, ESPN West Palm. He'll do any interview. He's an independent filmmaker, and just like you, I, and many other creative people out there, he's just trying to get his name out.
Yeah, man, because it's a very depressing world out here for us guys that are quote unquote creative. It's a very long grind in life where you might make it or you might spend your whole life and never make it. So how are you planning out this, Neil? Going on us knowing each other for 4 years, where do you want to see yourself in even 4 more years? How do you want to plan this out, you going into media?
Well, first of all, I'm still planning it out. I think you never really stop planning it out. I've been planning it out since I was 11 years old, and it just keeps going in different directions, from play-by-play to sports talk to more play-by-play. And I've been fortunate to be in a lot of the right places at the right time, if you will, between – I've always kind of flirted with the big stages. I interned for CBS. I was a finalist in maybe we could talk a little bit more about it later. I was a finalist in what's called the Fantasy Phenom contest here in New York, the big station, it is the biggest sports station in the country, WFAN. They have an American Idol. They didn't have it this year. At least I haven't seen it yet. But fans, regular people, get to try out and get their own show on the Fan once a week for a year. I was a finalist. I was on with Boomer and Carton, their morning show. I was on with Mike Francesa, the afternoon guy, who's been doing it for 30 years. And I was on TV while doing that. I was on Fox Sports 1 nationally. And because of that, even though I didn't win the contest, I was on the station just for a night to do an hour show. That was 2 days before Christmas. I broke down the Odell Beckham Jr. and Josh Norman fight, and if he would appeal his suspension or what kind of suspension he'd get the next day in court. So I've definitely flirted with the big stages, and you have too. And I think it's just the point of just kind of keeping your head to the ground, just keep grinding and see what works and see who likes you.
Do you ever get discouraged, though? Because I'm at this point right now where I'm not discouraged. I'm not giving up, but I'm trying to refine my passion. You know what I mean? Because I listen to very little radio now. I just listen to Opie and Howard. And I feel like me listening to the radio as a kid and at the gym was kind of what fueled my passion. And now being in the radio business, it's like I just see it as a job,
Well, I'm also a substitute teacher. I'm looking to maybe go back to grad school for education and teach. I'm pretty much in school every day right now working. So I have the secondary career choice. You, however, do not. And I know I'll say this again at the end, but you're someone who would give his right lung to be in radio. And I have nothing but respect for that. You definitely would die to be in this industry. And I think ultimately it'll pay off for you in the end.
Yeah, I'm hoping it does too, because I know people see my passion, and I've really humbled out. Because I think when I got hired by Rover's Morning Glory in Cleveland, I think that was the point where I thought I was untouchable and that I was in a safe spot in my radio career where I was going to grow there for some reason. And, of course, we all know how that planned out on St. Patrick's Day. And I think getting fired from that show really taught me that anything can happen in this business, which is why I'm much more, at times, depressed, but very humble now. Is I think I appreciate each day more,
Well, shock jock radio is tricky. I think it lulls you into a false sense of security, especially if you're working for the shows. The idea is to be as outrageous and wacky and edgy as possible, where at the same time you still work for a big conglomerate, a big business that is the radio station and the corporation, and that if you do stupid things out there, you're going to get disciplined. So it definitely is a double-edged sword, if you will.
Yeah, I'll never forget when I got fired from RMG. It was so weird. You just called me, and you're like, what the fuck happened? That was probably the low point where I've learned that I have a very small clique in radio, and I would say you're in it. And I trust you, a few people that work here, and then a few people from Chicago. Like, this is a business, dude, where you really can't trust anybody. You will get screwed over in a second. When you were flirting with WFAN, and once your hour-long show was over with, were you sad? Were you pumped up? What's that like where you have that taste of success? Because I have that here at the Bone, and then it just makes you even more hungrier,
Well, it makes you hungry. I remember it just flew by. The anticipation, at least the couple weeks leading up to it, was just tremendous. I prayed that something crazy would happen in sports that I could talk about and really dissect for an hour, because don't forget, late December, football's winding down, Giants and Jets. The Jets were still in the hunt for the playoffs. Giants were basically out of it. And then all of a sudden that Beckham and Josh Norman fight happened the Sunday prior, and boom, that whole week's topic was Beckham. So it's a perfect fit for the show. But the show absolutely just flew by. I didn't want to leave my chair. I was in the Boomer and Carton studios. Nationally, you could watch them on CBS Sports Network, and I was sitting in Craig Carton's chair for an hour doing that show, and it was tremendous. I know I use tremendous a lot like Donald Trump, but that is my buzzword of the day.
Now, I want to ask you this, because you are going into the sports media business, and you were on sports radio on WFAN. Break down for me your take on Manziel, and then I'll give you my side of why I despise this entitled dirtbag.
Well, they were going to take different sides. I think we both could take the same side. Funny thing was, Jim Rome actually made some sense today in his CBS Sports Minute, especially locally here on the Fan. They get these little national hosts, Rome and Boomer, Sison, Doug Gottlieb, and those guys. They do like little minute-long takes on different topics. And Rome basically said, Johnny's got to dry out. And there's really no way around it. The guy is a bit of a brat, not just a bit of a brat. He is a brat. And maybe you could equate him to the affluenza kid who was also from the state of Texas, if you will, just maybe even more successful because he's had that NFL production. But, yeah, guy's a brat. And you really, you can't compare somebody like that to maybe, what happened to a couple of other cases. The guy has taken tremendous God-given talent and for right now is flushing down the toilet.
Do you really think he had God-given talent, or do you think he was just good because he didn't have as much competition?
Ryan, you don't win a Heisman for sitting on the couch. I mean, you have to have not only the football IQ, but you have to have some God-given talent for sure.
Well, I mean, would you say that Ryan Leaf had God-given talent? Or maybe he was good in college, but it just wasn't supposed to pan out in the NFL because he's short. I'm just trying to break it down because I'm the one that thought he would take over Cleveland, and that's not what happened. So I just don't know sports.
Just because someone has God-given talent doesn't mean they're saintly. I mean, they're just born with tremendous talent for a craft, and what they choose to do with it, that's up to them.
Yeah, because he also sent out this tweet, which kind of shows that I don't think he's grateful for what he's been given on these 23 years on Earth, and I don't think he's grateful for what he has. There's a guy that works in Cleveland. He actually worked in the same building I worked at. His name is Will Burge, and he works at WTAM 1100 in Cleveland. And it's a pic that somebody sent Will of Johnny Manziel sitting at a bar in Columbus before a Bieber concert, watching the NFL draft, and it's Johnny wearing a bandana and just looking bored, and it says 2 years ago, he was a first-round pick. Now he's unemployed watching it at a bar in Columbus before the concert. First of all, before I even get to Manziel's response of a tweet, I thought this was a very bizarre tweet because this is why I despise sports journalism, is this guy Will wouldn't say it to Manziel's face. This guy Will wouldn't even think about saying it. He would want to get a soundbite from him. He would want to try and talk to Manziel and get on his good side. So I thought this showed the bad part of sports journalism where you catch someone in the moment and then you go, ooh, they look depressed. Let's make a headline out of it. But then Manziel did not make a good case for himself. Yeah, this guy Will Burge comes off kind of like a weird dude to have someone send him a pic of Manziel by himself at the bar. But guess what Manziel tweeted back? Have you heard about it? He said...
Yeah, he did the mug shot, and then he tweeted out that at least he's wearing a shirt this time.
No, that's the other tweet. Here was his tweet in response to the Cleveland sports analyst, quote unquote. Here was what he said. Should have said it to my face and not have sat across from me tweeting away, you pussy. And thought it was odd. You make more money than him. You've banged girls that are hotter than him. You have God-given talent. You've had everything set up. Why are you letting some no-name sports analyst in Cleveland get to you? Thought it was very bizarre. It shows that he's not very confident in himself. Because it wasn't a very shining moment for him, being unemployed at a bar watching the draft. What's your take?
No, go ahead. I think the best part about that, though, is that you say, and everyone says he's unemployed yet, he's probably got 6 or 7 figures in his bank account. So he's all right for right now. There are people who are unemployed that are scraping by 2 and 3 jobs to try to feed their family. So compared to them, I would not call him unemployed. I would say he's out of a football job.
I just thought it was a very lowbrow tweet by Will. I'm not calling him out. I'm not ripping on him. I just thought it was very odd the way that you would tweet that and not expect him to reply, and you think that's a witty tweet. There's something that's going on with sports journalism, Neil, where it's becoming TMZ land. And I tweeted this before I joined Rover's show, and I remember they made a big hoopla about this. They freaked out. Manziel got into some argument with somebody at a bar in November 2014, and I tweeted out, if you can't handle the pressure in Cleveland, then how are you going to handle the pressure ever? I said, this isn't TMZ land, bro. Calm down. And I remember the host of the previous show got mad that I had any sort of an opinion on Twitter. But going back, that tweet's right. It seems like he's very thin-skinned, and any criticism he gets, Neil, any little criticism, this little bitch freaks out,
Well, I think he just wants to show he's a celebrity that's going to fight back instead of the guys that just kind of ignore the haters and just move on. I think he just wants to show that he's got a little bit of a Texas streak in him.
But don't you think that's going to hurt him in the end? Because there's a lot of players, there's a lot of people from Texas that are public figures that you don't see them going after sports analysis saying you're a pussy. I just think this is the beginning of the end for Johnny. I don't see this playing out well.
I think he's different from a guy like, if you've ever seen, any of your listeners have seen the 30 for 30 on Todd Marinovich, who was the USC quarterback in the late 80s. He was built to be a football player by his father. He underwent rigorous training programs, and ultimately he ended up with a lot of emotional instability and drug problems. He's very different from Johnny because, again, Johnny has all the money and support in the world, and Marinovich had basically none of the money and support in the world.
Yeah, he even got into trouble in 2009 and 2004 and 07 for drugs. So Marinovich had that problem his whole life. You know what I mean? Yeah, man, I think addiction goes on forever, and I think it really depends if Johnny wants to be a celebrity or he wants to be a football player, and if he's willing to give up the party life for it. Don't you agree if that's going to be the last thing that we'll see on the ultimate decision of Manziel?
Well, he dried up, if you remember. He dried up after his first year, and everybody was all proud of him for it, and then, just went down the drain again.
All right. Here's the deal. We're going to come back, and we're going to break down some other news that is going on. How can people tweet you, Neil?
People could tweet me at Neil Dwyer 1993, and I guess we'll plug this later, but I also host a show occasionally called The Dwyer Dish, which you can find on SoundCloud. I'll give you the link to that page. It's pretty long, so I'll give you a tiny URL version, okay?
Sounds good. And they can call the show 856-49-HOPPY. That's 856-49-HOPPY. And tweet at me at Ryan Hoppy Radio. We will be right back in about 6 minutes. Hang on.
Happy Hour. Happy Hour. Live from Tampa Bay, you are tuned in to Happy Hour.
All right, welcome back to Happy Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppy. Sorry about that dead air. We were gaining some momentum in this segment as my guy Neil Dwyer is on the line. Well, what happened was I worked out today and I swam, and if I eat a lot on the creatine I'm on, you end up having problems in the bathroom. So I'm literally in the middle of a rant. Me and you, Neil, we were having a great segment about Manziel, and all of a sudden I'm like, uh-oh. I have to go to the restroom for 25 minutes. It was not a pretty scene. Go on.
You better be specific because problems in the bathroom can mean a lot of
diarrhea. It was not a good scene because what happened was I work here at Cox Media, and it's How 1015, Mix 94.9, 97X, The Bone, The Eagle. It's a long hallway of everybody here. And then when you get to like 97X and The Eagle, there's the little like window that you can see through because the rest of it's covered by a wall. So I'm running out to go to the restroom, which is diagonal to the door to run out. And then the other side is the break room. And there's like 6 cute girls from the promotions team, and they're all getting soda at the machine. And, dude, I could not have looked more awkward running to the restroom. You had to be there, Neil.
Day in Hoppy Land.
Yeah, dude, we haven't met in person, but I live a very odd life. We have this joke via Facebook chat where whenever something really bad or really awkward happens to me, I say it's the Curb Your Enthusiasm moment. Cue the Curb music. Don't you notice that throughout our 4 years of this friendship, you can tell that a lot of weird things happen to me? It's just my life.
I mean, we might as well start dating at this point. I mean, people that are friends at least have met. I mean, there's been some long-distance relationships that people haven't met for 10 years.
And what I love, too, is our friendship...
You're the woman, by the way. I hope you know that.
Oh, yes. Of course I'm the woman in this friendship. I go through these moody swings, too, which people need to know about. I'll message you at like 11 o'clock at night freaking out about my life because I've been up for 16 hours. Will I ever make it in radio? Am I talented? Am I good? And then the next morning, I'm like, hey, Neil, I'm good now. That night, will I ever make it in radio? Am I good?
And then I just every time you speak, I just say, yes, dear. Yes, dear.
And what I love,
Yes,
too, is
dear.
the best part is Facebook shows me if you read the message, so I know you read it. So then I just keep going, and then there's like 7 in a row. And then I'm like, oh, did you see this clip of Howard with Robert Downey Jr.? Like, I just go off the rails and go on to a new topic. I literally don't know how you have not unfriended me yet, Neil. It's a very odd life.
Well, it's kind of like the same as donating to the Christian Children's Fund. You just can't stop doing it.
Do you really see me as one of the Cars for Kids kids, as one of those auction kids? I'm no different than them.
Yeah, well, at least they don't text while driving the Cars for Kids.
I do have an addiction to my ego, dude. I think I'm getting a little bit too cocky, but I've been humbled out the last year. Did you ever think I was an egomaniac or I was out of control?
No, I don't think you were an egomaniac. I think you were just patting yourselves after the hosts you've hung around with that have had big careers, and you just want to be like them. And, sometimes that works, and sometimes when you're a little guy, it doesn't. It happens. It's life.
Yeah, I think basically I got to be myself but not try to overcompensate, which is basically the lesson for life. Call the show, 856-49-HOPPY. That is 856-49-HOPPY. Tweet at Neil. Add Neil Dwyer, 1993. I'm at Ryan Hoppy Radio. All right, I saw this headline via the Daily Mail, and I wanted to get your take on it. It says here, and this is another school shooting, but whatever. It wasn't unique enough for the news. It wasn't good enough for a plot line, so you don't hear about it on CNN or Fox News. It wasn't on the Huffington Post. It wasn't on any of the news sites. I had to go to the dailymail.co.uk, literally a website from Britain that covers American news that America doesn't cover. Did you know about this school shooting in Maryland, Neil?
I knew about the situation in Delaware with the girl who got killed in the bathroom. But
I didn't know about that one because they don't cover it anymore. It's not cool to cover school shootings like this one. And the gunman shot the mother dead who was picking up kids from the Maryland high school and injured a person who was watching it who tried to help with the argument between the mom and the shooter, which it escalated quickly. It says here, a woman was shot dead at High Point High School in Beltsville, Maryland, a suburb of Baltimore. She was picking up her children when a man began arguing with her, police said. Another man tried to intervene, and the first man shot him in the shoulder, police chief Hank said. Police said gunman then fatally shot the mom, who was said to be in her 40s. The woman died at the scene immediately. All right. We have a violence problem in America. I feel like shootings happen all the time at these schools, but it became such a norm after Sandy Hook and after the Colorado movie theater and Adam Lanza. All those guys, there's the one that happened in the Cleveland suburb, and then he went out and he became a fugitive for a day or two. I feel like the media, dude, got sick of it not being a cool plot line to talk about on their 24-hour news cycle. So we seem to kind of just not talk about it anymore,
Well, listen, I think when even the media stops talking about something, it becomes almost too normal, and unfortunately, things like that unfortunately do happen all the time. As far as covering them, I think the media's biggest flaw was making these guys into mini celebrity. They didn't think they were doing it, but by naming them by name and showing the pictures everywhere, it's egomaniacs.
Well, TMZ is ridiculous when they named the guy, James Holmes, the Joker. That's what he wanted to be. He dressed up as the Joker at the opening of The Dark Knight Rises. That's what he wanted, and we gave it to him. That was the most infuriating thing. To me, Neil, that was in 2012, and that was what began that whole spree where these shootings happened, and this spree where the media was making a celebrity out of these shooters. You know what I mean? And I think the media got burned.
Was he dressed as the Joker? Wasn't he dressed as that other villain from Batman?
No. He was the Joker. He had the orange hair. That was the whole thing, was he came in smoky like the Joker, and he was wild, and he shot 70 people. And that was a good plot line because he was the weird medical school kid that went to a school in Denver. And he was the awkward guy that nobody liked in class. But when a shooting happens at a school and a mom is dead, nobody's talking about it because there's not much to it. It was an argument. Whatever. Britain's covering it. A news site in New Zealand's covering a shooting that happened in Baltimore, but we're not covering it. Why am I the only news source that's talking about violence in America, dude? It's sickening. I know we're in the political season. I got it, but my God, dude. We wonder why violence will never go away. It's kind of like we don't want to think about it and think about these innocent lives dying, Neil, so we just quit talking about it on the news. It's sickening.
Well, you were the one that made Rob Ford cool before it was cool to like Rob Ford.
Thank you for patting me on the back on that. Jimmy Kimmel and then the sports junkies on WJFK in Washington, D.C. are the two examples that made national headlines for having Rob Ford on their show. But I'm the one that knew about Rob Ford because I listened to radio in Toronto. I'm the one that knew about him before everybody else, Neil. I knew about Rob Ford when he allegedly groped the person he beat in the mayoral election in Toronto. He groped her and spanked her ass at a classy gala in Toronto. Remember that? And he had the drool and the spit and the beer all over his white suit. And I sent you the link. And I was talking about him when I was doing the podcast in my room. Wasn't it weird how I was the first American to talk about him?
I think it's just going to be weird in a couple of years when people ask me whether I am a teacher or broadcaster. People are going to ask me, weren't you on that interview with the kid that says Rob Ford grew up and spanked someone's ass?
I think it's going to be weird when people look up your name in 5 years and they're like, why did you affiliate yourself with that degenerate that has that small syndicated show out of Boise, Idaho? Because that's what I'm going to be.
You don't want to go to Idaho. You like the Florida sun too much.
I do want to make it here, man. It is ridiculous. I'm just appreciating each and every second. You know what I mean? Like, how would you break down this last year for me before we get to this next news I want to rant about? How would you break down what's happened? I don't even know how to break it down. I don't know where I'm going to be in a year. I'm taking in every moment, Neil.
Hey, welcome to broadcasting. People don't know where they're going to be tomorrow, the next day, the next second. Between you and I, it's really our first year or so of our the professional end of our careers, not just being amateurs anymore. And, you've gone through a few changes. I've gone through a few changes, but in the end, it makes you stronger, right?
And it teaches you that there are egos in this business that will screw you over. And I've had it, and you've seen egos. I'm not going to put words in your mouth and talk about things, but you've seen how egos can change a person. Isn't it sad that talking behind a mic makes people think they're bigger than they're not?
Well, I think what's also pretty disheartening is you see, especially in the TV side of things, you were talking about sports journalism before, and certainly while there's a very headline-grabbing influenza in maybe the print media and the blogs and radio and all that, and TV, they just fired a guy, I don't know if you heard this, in Nashville. He got fired. He was doing a Prince-themed sportscast after he died a couple of weeks ago. And he did the sportscast, and he was fired not too long after that. He was there 12 years or so. The station thought it was insensitive. So a couple of friends of mine, one in particular, out of Richmond, he's a great guy. He's very nerdy about the business, especially what he does as weekend anchor over at Richmond. And he always says that he tries to put a very cool theme on a lot of his sportscasts and be creative in it. See how disheartening it is. And I'm like, I just kept saying to myself, welcome to that side. That's why I'm glad I do what I do. Between play-by-play and radio, I could be much more creative than on TV.
Yeah, it seems like TV anchors are put in a tough position because I've networked with a few of them at various conventions and when they came to my radio school, and they had so much more personality off the air. It's very sad that they have to sit there in front of the TV and act like they're Walter Cronkite from the 1960s. You know what I mean?
I thought you were going to say the 1940s from them. Like, oh, boy, you better learn your history.
No, but I'm serious, dude. Isn't it weird how TV people kind of have to portray like they're professional even though they're getting drunk every night after the newscast?
Well, not even that. I think, I like parts of TV, but I was always just more attracted to radio. I thought it was just much more authentic and much more of an intimate medium, and even print, too. I love to write. I just think it's just definitely more intimate and kind of not in your face, but more it connects more with people, even all these years later, even as they say radio's dying, and that maybe podcasts like, well, certainly not yours and mine, but other podcasts like Bill Simmons are growing and kind of shaping the way that sports media is fueled.
Well, why wouldn't you say our podcasts are growing? They're up and coming. They're young. I mean, anything's possible, I guess.
I've had single-digit listens in the last 3 episodes. Let's get real.
Well, I've had decent numbers within the last year, but I just don't know who's listening. I got a great listen in Grand Rapids. I got 10,000 listens in the last month when I had Eric Zane on, but I just don't know what it means. You know what I mean? People listen and then they close out. Like, I find listens.
According to SoundCloud, I actually have a big audience in Kazakhstan, excuse me.
Maybe you can be syndicated there. Neil Dwyer in the morning in Kazakhstan.
I could be with Borat.
I have this other headline here that I want to get to that I find very funny, but also very sickening, because you would not expect a father to ever put their kids in this position, which is what's funny about it. What happened isn't funny, but the headline you would think is something from The Onion. The headline is something that I can't even believe. I'm dumbfounded, Neil Dwyer. It says here, father blackout drunk, taken in for DUI with kids in the back seat.
Something that happens every day, unfortunately, and not everybody could be Father of the Year.
I don't get the idea of drunk driving. I don't get why people do it, why you can't just plan out your night, or why you can't just get an Uber, and why they go, but I don't want to have my car towed. Here's the deal. It's like this. Would you rather pay $100 and have your car get towed, or pay $20,000 in lawyer fees and then have your license suspended for a minimum of 8 months and you lose your reputation? I just don't get why DUIs are at an all-time high. You know what I mean? It's sickening.
Well, I've said on the podcast once on the dish, and by the way, I say I have single-digit listens. That's all tongue-in-cheek. I'm very proud of what you and I have done so far. But going back to this, I've said I don't care if I do mooch off my friends, especially rides off my friends a lot. Yeah, I refuse to even take one drink and drive. It's just too risky. It's not worth it.
Yeah, I always plan on my night. I live about 8 minutes from downtown St. Pete, and if I get buzzed or if I get drunk, I always plan on my night. Even if I have 2 beers, I always do it, just because I have so much that has been given to me and that I've earned in Tampa Bay, and I don't want to lose it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
All right, it says here, a father from California has been accused of being so drunk he could have been brain dead. Oh, wow. Father of the Year on June 22nd, or whatever date it is for Father's Day. Everybody should get him one of those cups that says Father of the Year, because nothing screams classiness, Neil Dwyer, like a father who was so drunk that he could have been brain dead and he was driving with the kids in the back seat. Imagine how horrifying that must be for the kids.
Also, I know a kid whose mother was an alcoholic and drove drunk with her many, many times in the back seat. It's again, not everybody can be parent of the year, unfortunately, and they certainly don't act like it. Honestly, there's really not much for me to comment on. I mean, what am I going to say? Got to give him a break. There's not really much of a different opinion I could give, unfortunately.
Well, guess what his alcohol level was. Guess.
You said brain dead, so I'm going to say 0.30.
Double that. 0.60.
How do you even survive that? How are you alive?
I mean, they're lucky that their dad didn't die and that they'll have some father figure. You know what I mean? I mean, shame on this piece of shit for doing this. Oh, my Lord. I mean,
I'm not a biologist, but essentially the person had more alcohol in their blood than blood.
Yeah, they might have had more alcohol in their body than they have water in their body. When your blood alcohol level is 0.604, more than 7 times the legal limit. I mean, this is out of control.
How many Long Island iced teas does it take to get to that?
I'm thinking it was shot after shot after shot, dude. I mean, he said, I need to get some help and I need to make a life change. You think when you're 7 times the limit and you have your kids in the back seat and you almost died and you could have been brain dead, you think it's time for a life change? I would hope you feel that way. I don't know.
You were so drunk that Johnny Manziel was bowing to him in envy.
Yeah, Johnny Manziel is going to have a plaque of this dirtbag in his apartment and be like, I want to someday be like you, Sensei. This guy is probably Manziel's mentor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's calling him Mr. Miyagi. There's a slow gif of Johnny clapping saying, good for you, bro. Good for you.
This guy's the king of Cleveland. Oh, my God, dude. That city drinks a lot, man. It is ridiculous how much Cleveland drinks. I can't even get over
how
it.
How would you feel if your three major sports teams couldn't win a championship in the last 52 years?
And the sun never comes out, and it's an average of 20 degrees all year round. You know what I mean?
And the fact that they can't get one guy to back up LeBron on the court, and the only need is one more guy and they win a NBA title. One more guy.
All right. Before I let you go, are they going to win this year? What is your take?
The Cavs, no. The Cavs are, once again, a one-man show. They're going to go to the finals because they're just blowing through the Hawks. And we mentioned Toronto before, Rob, before I'm actually watching the Heat and Raptors right now at halftime. Toronto's up in game 2. I couldn't believe they lost game. They A, tied it and went and sent to overtime in game 1, and then B, still lost in overtime. But looks like definitely Cleveland's going to be in that conference final, and definitely, and probably not definitely, but probably in the NBA finals. But it's definitely the West here again. It's not the Warriors with Curry because we don't know on his status, and he's still resting. Everybody's still resting and making sure that he's ready and healthy enough for the Spurs, but if not the Warriors, then certainly the Spurs are going to probably roll through the Cavs. But that's just how powerful one man could be, that he could will them against that Warriors team last year to 2 wins in the NBA title. That's amazing.
It is really amazing how Cleveland can't get anybody else to do it, but Irving has been healthy. Is there any chance Irving could be that key factor?
I mean, maybe he could be. Certainly that's why they drafted him. Like, even Michael Jordan needs Scottie Pippen. LeBron just needs himself and to win 2 games. It's remarkable.
All right. Before I let you go, Neil, where can people find the life and times of Neil Dwyer?
Again, you could tweet me at Neil Dwyer 1993, Neil Dwyer, NEILDWYER 1993, in case you want to have a spelling bee on Happy Hour. And then also I do the Dwyer Dish. Coming up tomorrow, actually, today, I released part 1 of my podcast with my buddy Alex from college. That was about the old days of Miami. I went to the University of Miami, by the way. I don't think we mentioned that. And old politics. And then part 2 is going to come up tomorrow, where we talk more about sports and music and some more lighter topics. But yeah, I do the podcast occasionally, sometimes by myself, sometimes bring a guest on, sports, politics, just try to keep the topics as diverse as possible. That's called the Dwyer Dish, and I'll send you the link, and you can link up that link, the URL with this podcast.
Well, Neil, thank you for coming on. I've been an awful friend saying I would have you on the last 9 months, so I'm glad we were finally able to do it, and I want to do it again soon. Sounds good, dude?
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, before you hang up, I want to tell everybody this. This kid would give, again, I said before, give his right lung. This kid will give 2 arms and 2 legs to work in radio. I've never met anybody more dedicated. He's going to make it more than me, and I say that. I'm not even plugging myself. He's going to make it more than me because he's got the dedication. So if anybody's out there listening, give this kid a shot, please. And please get him off my back. No, I'm just kidding. I love you, dude.
All right, dude. This has been Happy Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppy, saying peace out.
Happy Hour. Happy Hour.